We now want to make sure that as we launch the bird, our camera gets fixed to it and follows it throughout our scene. To do so, I will go back into my game camera class, where we have already implemented the setConstraints method. This method already has a node parameter, which we've added for this exact behavior, since we now want to use it to fix our camera to a certain node, or to attach it to a certain node. Obviously, we will later pass our bird node for this parameter from the game scene, and we now want to make sure that the camera then gets an appropriate constraint. Right at the bottom of this method, where I've as of now just checked the constraints property to our level edge constraint, I will now begin checking if we've gotten a node passed to the method. Since this is optional, I'll write if let node is node to see if we've actually gotten something in the parameter. As of now, we have always passed nil for this in our calls, in which case the contents of this if let statement would not be executed. So in the else part, I will just, like before, set the constraint property to level edge constraint so that these calls continue to work the way we expect them to. We will also need this level edge constraint when our bird is launched. But in this case, we will also need another constraint that should make our camera follow the bird. We do know that the center of our camera's frame is its position. So if we constrain the distance from our camera position to the bird's position to be 0 at all times, it should follow the node. Therefore, I will begin by defining a constant called ZeroRange as a new skRange instance. This time, it won't have a lower nor an upper limit, but one constant value, and that value is going to be 0. I can then define our position constraint as a SpriteKit constraints.distance to node. So a distance to a certain node. For the range, I will pass my ZeroRange, and I want to have this distance to the node that is passed to the method, so node for the second parameter. This will, if we pass our bird, fix our camera's position to the bird's position with the distance 0. And I now want to set the constraints by setting constraints to an array containing position constraint and level edge constraint, which will add both my constraints whenever our camera should follow the bird. And that's actually all I need to add to my method here, since we did implement it in a way that it already kind of contained the requirements for this addition with the node parameter. So let's go back to the game scene, where now, in the touchAsBegan method, where we let go of our bird, set our new constraints. Therefore, I will right at the top, before we do anything else, call GameCamera.setConstraints. And for the first two parameters, nothing will change. The scene will be self, the rect will be mapNode.frame, but now I want to add a node parameter by passing our bird node. And that should be it. It should make our camera follow the bird. And I also want to make sure that our bird doesn't fall out of our scene through the floor or through the walls. Therefore, I will add a physics body to the scene itself, and I will do this in the setup level method before adding our anchor. I want to set the physics body of my scene, so I can just write physics body without any node. I want to set it to a SK physics body instance, and this time I will choose the initializer with an edge loop from a CGRect. This will just add an edge in the shape and dimension of a rectangle, for which I will pass mapNode.frame, which is the rectangle around our complete level. I will, for the edge body, also set the appropriate categories by writing physics body.category bitmask and setting it to physics category .edge. Physics body .contact test bit mask will be physics category .bird to check contact with our bird, and also physics category .block to also be able to react when our blocks hit the ground later. And finally, I will set physics body .collision bit mask, which I will set to physics category .all, so that all elements collide with the edges of the level and don't just fall out of the scene. Let's test all of this on a real device just to make sure that it's smooth and we can really see if it works. I can once again launch my bird, and I can then see that my camera is following it, which is pretty cool. I could also see that our bird collided with the edge of our scene and it didn't just fly out of the frame. However, the edge at the bottom is at the very bottom, which places our bird inside of our visual floor, which kind of doesn't really make sense and looks weird. So why don't you try to fix our edge loop physics body of the scene so that it actually is at the right position, so on top of our ground tiles. We will solve it together in the next video, but I think it would be a small little challenge that would be great for you to work on your skills if you're up for it.